I'd like to think that we have the advantage there, but that takes us into the final topic, which is getting into some predictions, to get into some week 3 predictions. So before we get into that, I skipped the banner for it, but we had a question around predicting the 49ers record at the bye. If you had to say of the next 3 games, how do you think the 49ers will fare against the Packers, the Seahawks, and then the Cardinals?
God, my heart, and my initial prediction was 4-1. I want to say it so bad. I did not foresee these running back injuries being this stifling. And again, if you can promise me that Sermon and um Mitchell are healthy, I'm saying that they can be 4-1. But I can't rely on that. There's nothing that's telling me right now that that's going to happen. And so I have to err on the side of what probability is.
Right.
And that tells me that I think that they're going to go into the bye week 3-2.
Which is not the end of the world. When I looked at the schedule, I actually predicted 3-2 at the bye because of the matchups that I saw there, and still came out with a 12-win season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's entirely possible. I like to think that we will beat the Seahawks, and I'm going to say it now, that we will beat the Packers, then we will beat the Seahawks, and then we will drop one to Arizona. So I am going to put the 49ers at 4-1. As the resident homer on this channel, I am predicting the Seahawks victory, and won't be surprised at all if the 49ers are 5-0. That's a lie. I will be very surprised.
Well, I will say this, though, too, right? If we look at these as individual games, if they get out of this one and Sermon and Mitchell are healthy going into that next one, I'm picking the 49ers. Right. I'm just not confident that's going to happen at this point going into week 3, right? I have no reason to be confident with that. So I reserve the right to change my mind if that happens. But at this point, I'm just not confident that it will. The other thing that I will say, though, is that let's say they go in 3-2, and I figured that they would be 4-1. I also initially had them losing to the Colts. I do not see that happening anymore.
I'm with you there.
Even if they're 3-2, I think that they leave out of Game 6 with the same record that I expected all along, which was essentially 4-2. And so that I am confident in. I think that they will beat the Colts coming out of that bye week, and that was not something I thought initially going into this season.
I also had predicted the Colts would take that one when I went through and looked at the initial games. All right, this is sort of a curveball that I'm throwing out there, but as a man who participates in 6 different fantasy football leagues, I have to think about the 49ers from a fantasy perspective. And thank God I was correct about the value for Deebo Samuel, and ended up with him in 5 out of 6 leagues at incredible value for a player that's potentially going to put up 1,500 yards from scrimmage this year.
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic. But everyone else on the damn team is a train wreck because you don't know what's going to happen from one week to the next. Yeah. So if you had to throw it out there, realizing that we don't even know who's going to be starting or playing at running back this weekend, it seems like Kyle doesn't want us to understand who's going to be getting the majority of the looks as far as receiver goes. Who do you think is a sneaky fantasy breakout star this week? Who do you think for the 49ers is the biggest fantasy asset in this game?
So it's hard to put sneaky next to this player's name, but he has not produced from a fantasy standpoint whatsoever this season. And if I'm a fantasy owner, I'm throwing my phone at the wall repeatedly over this player right now. This player has contributed in many ways and has helped the 49ers win. But I think this is the week that he absolutely has to break out in order for the 49ers to win this game, on top of that run game being lethal. I have to go with George Kittle. I think this is the week that he finally puts it all together. You know, I'm going to give him 8 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. I think this is the week that he does it. So, yeah, I'm going to go with George Kittle.
I love it. I couldn't take him where he was being drafted in
No,
fantasy
no.
drafts because it just didn't make sense. I knew that he
Right.
would struggle to get into the end zone yet again this year. For whatever reason, we just can't seem to use him as a red zone target.
Yeah.
And certainly he's such an asset as a blocker, not to mention my predictions around the 49ers running it down people's throats this season, which may or may not actually be the case as injuries shake out. I also was going with a couple of players that haven't had the production you would want up until this point. I think this could be the week that Brandon Ayuk steps out and has the game that we all hope and know that he's capable of having. The other player I've got my eye on, depending on who starts, is Trey Sermon. I just think it's too natural of a fit within this offense for him not to be successful. I thought that it was going to be last game, and then the initial carry didn't happen early enough for it really to have been a breakout game, and it turned into an injury and therefore never actually happened. So those would be my two that I've got my eye on. Now, the all-important, we both obviously think that the 49ers have a good shot at beating the Packers this week. What's your take on what the final score will be?
Yeah, so I think the score is going to be a lot closer than what I initially predicted. Again, I thought I thought of all the games, this would be the biggest spread going into the season out of the first three. And I'm just not that confident anymore. But I do think that they're going to win. I think they still have enough pieces to win this game. It's a home game, so that's an advantage. It's the first home game with fans in the regular season for since the NFC Championship against these very same Green Bay Packers. There's enough players on that Packers team that are still haunted by that season. They're still haunted by that moment. And the moment that something starts to go the way that it did in that NFC Championship, I can just see them packing it in and folding. And so I'm going to go 27-23 49ers.
I like it. So just barely, if I remember correctly, is the spread 3.5? Is that what
I don't know
at?
what the spread is. I actually have not looked at it this week. This is the first week I have not looked at it yet.
I'll have to double check.
Yeah, the
because
line
that
seems
could
to
have
change a
been
lot.
Philly's spread, but
that was initially. I'll look it up while you're giving your prediction.
Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, I see a similar advantage for the 49ers. I think it's going to be a bit more lopsided because I do think that this is a game where some of the things start to roll. And I think that this 49ers team is set up in that way that it can get real tight when things aren't going their way, much like the Philadelphia game. It can snowball in the wrong direction, but flip the script when things are going well, when the run game is setting up the play action. It just feels like the snowball downhill, we run over teams. And we haven't seen that as of yet because of the collapse in the end of the Detroit game. But I feel like we see it a bit here against the Packers. I think that you've got the defense in relentless pursuit of Rodgers. He is not the mobile quarterback that we will face in weeks 4 and 5. So I do think that we'll get him on the ground. I hope we'll dirty his uniform with 4+ sacks on Sunday. I think we'll focus on stopping the run early. I hope that we'll be able to hold Aaron Jones underneath 80 yards rushing and allow them to focus on Devontae Adams because you're not going to stop that guy entirely. Shout out to Palo Alto High School. Devontae and I went to the same high school. I think Harbaugh went there too. Yes, he did.
Yeah, I think so.
And Jerry Garcia, just to shout out to Jerry. But I think Devontae still lights us up. I think over 100 yards receiving and 1+ touchdowns. I think in fantasy, that guy's a freaking stud. But I think the 49ers roll in this one, 31-17. Did you get that spread?
Yeah. So the chat's saying anywhere from 3 to 3.5. What I'm looking at, I have it at 3.5. I see the over under at 49.5. So I guess I'm taking the over on the points and I'm taking the 49ers to cover the spread. Yep.
I'm with you 100% there. Over and take the Niners to cover against the Packers.
Yeah. One of the things too that is going to be something to pay attention to is I believe the Packers have 1 sack on the season. And the 49ers have given up only 1 sack on the season.
Something's got to give.
Something's got, right? Well, and maybe not, because if the 49ers aren't giving up a sack and the Packers aren't sacking, then Jimmy's just going to sit back there all day. So, a non-pressured Jimmy is a confident Jimmy, and that's the Jimmy that we want to see go out there. So even if the run game isn't clicking as much as we would hope it would be. Maybe Jimmy can outduel Rodgers just from the simple fact that he can sit back there for 4 or 5 seconds and pick them apart.
Yeah, it's not fair to really compare the two when hopefully Rodgers is getting completely demolished by our defensive line and
Right.
Jimmy's uniform is completely clean. But I do think that's the way in which he can potentially duel with Aaron Rodgers. You have to set the advantage for Jimmy and you have to take Rodgers down a peg and truly frustrate him. It's interesting to me, his body language and demeanor these first couple of weeks is all over the place. Rodgers, the first week, just seemed checked out to me. I mean, really checked out. And then in week 2, when he comes out saying, we were flat week 1, we need people to have more energy, I didn't see that from him.
Right.
I felt like he was expecting that from others on the team. But all I saw in him was anytime a play was missed, he's shooting that glare over to the sideline. I mean, it's just uncomfortable, the dynamic that's going on there. So I do think if it starts to snowball in the wrong direction, I count Aaron Rodgers on that list of players that you mentioned that could potentially check out a little bit in that game.
Yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is a front runner. I really do. Great player. I mean, probably the most talented quarterback I've ever seen play the game. And that's there's a lot of great quarterbacks. To me, the arm angles, the arm strength, the mobility, the accuracy all over the field, the ability to go multiple weeks without interceptions while throwing 3-4 touchdowns a game. It's incredible. That touchdown to INT ratio is something that we'll probably never see again. But I think he's a front runner. And once things start to fold on him, he can give. And so you're right. I put him in that category. And because I put him in that category, if things start going wrong early for them, it could turn into a blowout for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, he does not seem to have that confidence that I spoke about with Russell Wilson, that self-assuredness of I am going to go win this game right now and will it to happen. You can see a different personality type in Aaron. And it begs the question of, people always say, what if he had been drafted to the 49ers? I don't know. He would have faced the same adversity that Alex Smith faced, and I don't know that he would have come out of that the same man that he came out in Green Bay. It's fair to wonder. Well, thankfully, we don't have to wait too long for another game. But as we come to a close on this show, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, Jesse. It's a pleasure talking with you. I hope that we get a chance to do this again at some point, whether it's here on this channel or over on your channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love what you're doing over there at Last Second Sports. Honestly, I love the grind, the work ethic that you clearly have, the passion that you have for the game, and the certain je ne sais quoi that you bring to your episodes as well. Am I correct in saying that you will be going on 49ers After Dark tonight in a little bit with Grant Cohn?
Yeah, about 15 minutes on Grant's channel. We do the weekly 49ers After Dark, so you can catch that over on Grant's channel, and we always have a ton of fun over there as well.
That's a great show. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It's funny as hell. Go over there, tune in, watch them in 15 minutes. A pleasure having you on, Jesse. Hopefully we can do this again. And until next time.